It's guaranteed baseball this time of the year to give us something to talk about. And certainly the Orioles have made it more than interesting with the way they've played, the drama going on, the pitching stuff going on. But between Caps and Wizards, and we got Derby races coming around, and lacrosse season here, and of course the NFL draft and the schedule release, and we have all of our road trips up for London and Nashville and Green Bay and Minnesota. But, it's hard to keep up with everything else that's going on. My remote control is worn out. I have not seen the Tampa Rays play, but it's a good thing I have some friends down there in Tampa. They're in town all week here. Neil Solondz joins us here. I always pronounce his name wrong. He's such a great dude, and a guy who also is near and dear to my heart and our family's heart as a donor on the bone marrow registry for his sister and saving his sister's life a couple of many years ago. I've gotten to know him a couple of years ago. Neil, what's going on, man? This is a better version of the Rays than maybe you and I have talked about the last couple of years. They're sort of in this thing a little bit right now, right?
I think they are, and thanks very much for having me on. I think the big question mark is how they get out of the schedule into mid-May. They had, by all accounts, the toughest schedule in the majors in April. They're in a stretch right now where they have one off day over a 36-day period, and they currently have 11 players on the DL, which is the most in Major League Baseball. So, if they can start to get some guys healthy, kind of hang around 500 through the middle of May, I think they have a shot to be really competitive.
You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Neil Solondz. That's SOLONDZ, and that's Neil, Neil. You can follow along with many of the Rays followers. I mean, we're still seeing an empty place down there. And, the back end of the whole Madden thing, I know for so many of you on the broadcast team and traveling with Joe, I mean, that's a special experience, right? And he's gone. He's not coming back. It's a different – but watching from afar what happened on the north side probably brings part sadness and emptiness and part happiness all the way around for all the people down there that like Joe Madden so much. And I think he left a very, very well-liked, well-respected guy, and I think a lot of people sort of understood his pathway in leaving Tampa, right?
I think there was an understanding on both sides. I mean, it couldn't have happened if Andrew Friedman didn't leave to go to the Dodgers. And, I think if you looked at the way the Rays drafted from 08 to 12 and the way some of the, decisions with free agents and trade, some of those things had worked out, the talent level was not the same in 2014, Joe's last season when the team was sub 500, as it was, let's say, from 08 to 11 or 12. The talent level had dropped off a little bit, and Joe had turned 60, and he had a great opportunity and tremendous financial opportunity. So I don't think anyone begrudges him for that. I mean, the Cubs had, when he went to them, among if not the most talented teams in baseball, and then that they've added to it since then. So he's in a great spot. I think Matt Silverman here has done a really good job of adding talent. Helping get the farm system back to where it needs to be so that the Rays can kind of return to that position that they were at from 08 to 11, where they won a couple division titles, went to the playoffs 3 times in 4 years, and then if you stretch it out to 13, won 90 games 5 out of 6 years.
In the case of the Rays and this nice start for them, I would attribute part of it just to Chris Archer because of where he was last year. But clearly they're hitting the baseball this year in a way that they haven't been able to in a couple of years, right?
Yeah, they're definitely scoring runs, and I think we'll get to it. But I think the big question is whether they get enough starting pitching to get them over the top. Everyone's always used that as kind of the MO, but I think that will kind of carry the day. There are a couple guys who've made, I think, major strides here in the first month. And Corey Dickerson, who's been hitting leadoff against right-handed pitching, that dates back to the second half of last year. I think he started to really feel comfortable, getting to know a new league and having to come to a team. Sometimes you put more pressure on yourself. And he also just felt that, playing on the turf, he needed to lose some weight. Not that he was overweight, but he dropped 25 pounds in the off season. Playing the outfield well. His bat speed is not changed a bit, and he's hitting the ball to all fields. And then Steven Souza Jr., I think, he has really clicked with Chad Mottola, who took over in September as the hitting coach. And I think basically they've gotten to the guy who came over from the Nationals in the Will Myers, Trey Turner deal. He's now using the entire field instead of being pull happy and home run happy. That's a big reason why, you're seeing him hit for an OPS of around 1,000 or so, and that batting average is above 300 because he's using the field. He's not trying to hit home runs. The home runs, a lot of the ones he's getting now are not these majestic 450-foot shots, but they're line drives, and that just keep soaring. He's a strong kid who's going to hit home runs naturally. He doesn't need to try and do it.
In the case of Archer, I don't know what has changed. I mean, 2 years ago, I would have said if in the offseason that the Rays were peddling him, I would have bought his stock. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a believer in him, more the good him than the bad him. I looked at last year as some sort of weird hiccup. I mean, I think the whole thing started, spring training and the Cuba thing. He's a pretty outspoken guy as well in a marketplace where I think they sort of cry out for some star power down there. He's a confident guy. I would love to have him in an Oriole rotation. I'd feel better about him than I feel about anybody this side of Bundy around here.
Well, I think the big thing with Chris, and the reason he had a tough time the first half of last year, is that he put too much pressure on himself. He admittedly tried to do too much. And remember, they were missing Alex Cobb for the better part of the year as he came back from Tommy John surgery. Now, Alex missed the previous season, but at the beginning of the season, Chris didn't go into the year as the guy who was supposed to be the number one in the rotation. And I think he put undue pressure on himself to kind of lead. And I think what happened was, as the season went on, he just said, okay, just go out and pitch. Don't try and be someone who you're not, just be Chris Archer. And I think he realized that was good enough, and I think that's why he's gotten off to such a good start and why the team also has played pretty well behind him when he started. I think the big thing, if you're looking at what he's done on the field, fastball command has been much better. I mean, he's throwing more strikes. And when he does that, especially down in the strike zone, it makes his slider better, it makes his changeup better. And I think he's poised for a really good year. I really do.
We've seen this the whole month, right? Whether it was Sanchez going down with the Yankees, the Orioles starting without Tillman, Britton, J.J. Hardy's dinged up now around here. The Red Sox, hell, they half the team had the flu or malaria or whatever it was a month ago when we started with them. Not to mention Price and their bullpen issues and injuries there. It hasn't been as easy in Tampa either, and never. I mean, and I'm still waiting on Alex Cobb, and I know you guys are as well. But Odorizzi, Hunter, it's been tough all the way around for all of these teams in this division, despite, I think, at this point showing maybe to be the best division in Major League Baseball. None of these teams are firing at full strength right now.
No, and I agree with you on the part about it being the best division. I mean, the fact that you've got, 4 teams either hovering or above 500 at this point in the year, I think speaks to the strength. And I think that, the Rays now with 11 players on the DL, they probably have the least ability to overcome because of the financial restrictions that they do have and the payroll. I mean, they don't have the resources to be able to make up for some guys. Now, they're getting close to having Colby Rasmus back. And I think that will help. They're getting close to having Malik Smith and Jake Odorizzi back. That will help. But, they're missing 4 guys in their bullpen that I think they were hoping would have a major role in Brad Boxberger, Sean Tullis, and now Tommy Hunter, who you mentioned, and Xavier Cedeno. And to me, that puts a little more pressure on the starting rotation. They have had a run where they haven't had a guy working into the 7th inning since the last road trip. And if they're going to take a major step forward, the rotation has to go deeper so they can force, or enable the bullpen not to have to get 12 outs a game, have them get 9 or fewer on a more regular basis.
Are they banging the drums down there to lose that franchise? I mean, I wonder and I worry because I follow the NFL. You know what I mean? And, I sort of get the itchy trigger, and the NHL's trying to get into markets like Vegas, and the NFL's going here, and we're playing games in London this year with the Ravens, and we're running road trips over there as well. And then I saw Montreal put on a couple of exhibition games, and, I think it does beg the question at some point. I mean, Oakland needs to figure out their circumstance there now that the Raiders have picked up and moved out. And clearly something has to give in your marketplace down there from the fan base perspective and the franchise because, it's inevitable. Every time I talk to you or anyone in your market, you talk about restrictions and payroll and losing players and losing the David Prices and anybody that's really good this side of Evan Longoria being gone. I think it's a shame that there's not a level playing field in baseball, but it has to get better, not not worse in Tampa, right?
I think it will, and I think it's going to happen in this market. A couple things. I mean, I think obviously the long-term signing of Kevin Kiermaier, who I believe is the best defensive player in the game, I think helps your franchise a great deal, and he's actually been sick the last several days too. When you talk about injuries or illness, but I think that was one sign in terms of locking up a player. And Archer has a long-term deal, and Longoria. So the Rays had their three franchise players, or their most visible players, locked up for the long term. I think for Major League Baseball, the Tampa Orlando market from a television standpoint is too large to pass up. And I think that they're close. They're not within the next couple of years. They would get a new TV deal, which would make them much more competitive. And I really do believe, from what I understand behind the scenes, is that they will be able to get a new stadium, and it will be more centrally located and will help. The TV and radio ratings have always been very good, especially when the team has been good. And, I think it's a matter of getting a generational fan base. I mean, you still haven't had kids who've had kids who were big Rays fans yet. And I think when that starts to happen, you start to grow your fan base over the long haul. And I think that's what, in my mind, creates more stability. I kind of look, I know you mentioned the Montreal thing. I kind of look at Montreal the way Tampa Bay used to be. When the Mariners were looking for a stadium, when the Giants were looking for a stadium, when the Chicago White Sox were looking for a stadium, Tampa Bay was kind of that piece. And eventually they got a team, but I think they're probably going to Montreal have to go through a few of those type situations before they get, a franchise. And I think it happens for Montreal if baseball eventually expands 10, 15 years down the road to 32 teams. So they have either 8 4-team divisions or 4 8-team divisions, something of that nature.
Well, it is kind of crazy expansion fees and all that, but they sort of dried that up 12 years ago with Washington. There aren't a whole lot of places to move franchises. I mean, the Marlins are, for sale down there for a couple $billion bucks. Certainly something's going to give here in this market as Peter Angelos enters 86. Either his boys will have the team or somehow Major League Baseball will wrest it away and try to sell it off to somebody else. There's going to be some movement, but I think in Tampa, it's clearly something's got to give down there with a facility, right? That's really that is the gig there.
And Major League Baseball, I mean, let's take a look. I mean, you mentioned the NFL and the NHL. I mean, the history of Major League Baseball, other than Montreal, is not to move teams. They have found a way to figure it out and get it done. And I think they have much more of a patient approach, not wanting to move out of a market approach as they did in Los Angeles with the NFL or San Diego or whatever it may be.
I don't know about patient. I mean, those situations have been screwed up for 20 years. I mean, the St. Louis thing is abhorrent, but I mean, for Oakland and San Diego, they were just never going to get stadiums. And I don't know that I'm giving up on Tampa or Pinellas County or, any of those counties down there, going down to Bradenton South. I don't even know where the ideal place to have a stadium there would be. Probably downtown Tampa, right? But it's sort of the real estate has kind of gone to other things. And the hockey team has done exceedingly well down there, right? And look, you got sunshine down there, but you also have rain every afternoon. There'd almost have to be a roof on whatever is built down there, right?
Yeah, and I would think if it is, then it's got to be if it's either retractable or opaque in some way, so it feels like you're outside when you're not. So when there is sun, you feel like you're outdoors. And if it's gloomy, that's what you have lights for, and that's what you have cover for. I mean, I think there are people who like the 72 degrees and the I would tell you probably pitchers like it more than anything because they can grip the baseball. They don't have to worry about a Matt Barnes type situation where the ball slips, something like that.
Neil Solondz joins us here. He is from the Rays radio team. You can follow his journey out on Twitter under his name. That's Neil. If you're finding him, for the Rays, are they in this for the haul? I mean, do you expect to be on the phone with me in August or September when the Rays and the Orioles get together when the games matter? Do you expect them to be 500 and sort of banging around with an opportunity to be in the race, as they would say, some point after the trading deadline?
I think it depends on first health, and B, if they get out of the bad part of the schedule mid-May. There's a day off on May 18th, 19th that ends at 35 and 36 days. If they're at 500 at that point and they're starting to get healthy, yes, as long as their starting pitching starts to pick up innings. I mean, they had a stretch where they had a dozen games where they didn't get more than 6 innings from a starting pitcher, And eventually, that's going to continue to wear on an inexperienced bullpen. And that's where it affects you in June, July, and August. So I think if they start to get more 7-inning stints out of the starting rotation, in Cobb and Odorizzi and Archer, I think that allows them to stick around. So if those two things happen, health and the starting rotation going deeper, I would say yes.
All right, man. Well, enjoy the stint here. Don't beat us up too much. We've gotten off to a pretty good start around here, and we'll be seeing plenty of the Rays. Hey, it's a big AL East week here. Yankees and Red Sox. And, hey, what'd you make of the Machado-Pedroia nonsense? You're a baseball guy. The Tigers got into a brawl over the women. I don't know what's ever going to make it stop other than every time it happens, I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Here we go again.
Well, part of it is pitchers don't hit in the American League.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a lot easier to be more brazen when you don't have to worry about coming to the plate yourself. And, when you do something like that, you're kind of leaving your teammates, in danger somewhat. I mean, the danger is really the way it was handled by Boston. I mean, entirely. And I'm kind of curious what kind of suspension Matt Barnes gets out of all this. You can say it slipped all you want, but I mean, what happened is pretty clear. Dustin Pedroia's reaction makes it pretty clear. There's a way to handle things. I think, the manager, the coaching staff, I think, Buck's group polices themselves extremely well, handles things extremely well. I mean, look, was it the best slide in the world? Manny Machado would be the first to tell you it wasn't. But he apologized for it the moment it happened. He wasn't trying to hurt Dustin Pedroia. They could have handled that in a way of if they wanted to throw at him, I think there are a lot of guys who say, okay, you hit him, midsection and then move on and say it's done. And the guy heads on to first base and you move forward. But when you're aiming above the shoulders, I mean, you're asking for real trouble and real danger, and it should never happen in this game.
Neil Solondz joins us here from Tampa. He's on the radio team down there covering all things Rays. So if you're an Orioles fan, he's a great follow out on Twitter to stay abreast of everything going on in the division. These teams will get together this week amidst some raindrops and some nice starts for both franchises. Neil, I hope it's a long, prosperous summer for all of us. We'll stay in touch,
I'd like
man.
that very much.
I know you would. I know how much
much
you love the game. You can go follow him out there at Neil Solondz. That's NeilSolondz out on Twitter, and a bone marrow transplant giver gave life to his sister who needed a bone marrow transplant, so a happy ending for his family as well. So we always check in with him, and we were a big part of that 2 years ago with our Give a Spit tour before my wife had her second diagnosis. Well, my wife threw out the first pitch down in Tampa, so near and dear to our hearts. I should have bought that Rays tie-dye T-shirt. I really should. I screwed that up. Two mistakes on that tour. I meant to buy the Astros throwback and the Rays tie-dye. I didn't do it. I'm going to regret that for a long, long time. The Buy a Toyota Audio Vault is there. You will not regret visiting there. Caps, Wizards, Draft, NFL stuff, Orioles stuff. Luke's at the ballpark all week long. And, of course, we're monitoring the draft on Thursday night. Our WNST road trip's now up. Deluxe trip to London on sale. Nashville, Green Bay. Couple of options, two different budgets on Green Bay and Nashville, as well as a Minnesota trip that's going to be dynamite to the new stadium in the Mall of America. If you need some personal attention, just toss me an email. I'm happy to help you out. Nasty@WNST.net. I'm around all week. I'll be in Pittsburgh next week for games 3 and 4 of the Penguins and the Capitals. We'll be monitoring all of that all week long. The morning newspaper comes to you at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. And, of course, with the draft this weekend, you want to be on our WNST tech service. It is the best thing that we offer here. It's free of charge. Sign up at WNST.net. You get the breaking news, any of the trades, any of the movement first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis will be here getting you ready for the draft on Thursday as well. 3 until 5, the SSV on WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. If you need the road trip information, I am a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net. And, of course, streaming live on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.